Former NFL linebacker Emmanuel Acho left the league in 2016 to join ESPN to cover college football. He moved to Fox Sports this year, hosting the sports talk show Speak for Yourself. In an effort to speak directly on issues of race in America, Acho began a YouTube series this summer entitled Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. The acclaimed series tackles many controversial and taboo topics, not just inside the NFL, but in broader society as well.
Okay, I'm Dan Roberts, and we are delighted to have Emmanuel Acho with us today. Emmanuel, thanks for being here.
Of course, my man. Good to see you finally. I don't think we've ever officially met.
I love it. We're meeting virtually. That's how everyone meets nowadays. Dan, during the pandemic, a lot of people have had trouble being productive. You have gone into hyperdrive. You launched your series Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man back in June. And the timing was just terrific. I mean, you've racked up millions and millions of views. I'm sure most of our viewers today have heard of the series. At least I hope that they will watch the series. And then you've got your book coming out, also being published with the help of Oprah. So congratulations on that. That's coming out on November 10. Talk to us about just embracing the moment during the pandemic and just, launching the way you did. And did you ever expect that it would be so successful so quickly?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I had two primary work goals. It was I wanted to write a book and I wanted to sell a show that I created. I tweeted this out in April. I tweeted this out kind of flippantly. I'm not a big goal guy. I got my master's degree in psychology, so I may create an objective without limitations as opposed to goals, right? I have a whole theory on this, but Dan, I won't bore you with this unless you ask. So I have a whole theory on why I don't have goals. I have objectives without limitations. Well, fast forward in a little more somber and tragic of a mind state. The end of May, George Floyd tragically is murdered. And so as a Black man, Dan, I was like, I have to do something. The world sees me as a sports analyst, but I'm a Black man and I'm a human being. It is my responsibility to contribute to the world in some capacity. I called my best friend, Olympic gold medalist. Her name is Mo. And I said, hey, stand in as my producer. True story. I call a wedding videographer, Dan. And I say, hey, I have this idea. Can you come shoot this thing for me? I go to some all white room and I sit down in a chair and I record the first episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. I didn't do it to become famous. I didn't do it to get notoriety. I didn't do it to get now over 65 million views in 4 months. I did it out of a desire to help change the world. And I think that's one thing people have to know. There's your career and there's your calling. Your career, what you're paid for, your calling, what you're made for. My calling of Uncomfortable Conversations, I realized, that is what I was made for. My career is sports, NFL player, NFL analyst, but now this is my calling. And so that really, to answer your question in short and in long, Dan, is how everything took off. I just followed my heart. I followed my skill set. And I teamed up with people who believed in me. A wedding videographer, Dan, a wedding videographer. Like, this is not a Emmy award-winning editor. An Olympic gold medalist. This is not an Emmy award-winning producer. These are intelligent people who saw a vision that I saw. And together we created one of the most, I think, impactful, more than anything, things of the pandemic.
Let's talk about one of your biggest guests. You had NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. Made a lot of waves. And, I'm the sports business guy here at Yahoo Finance. I've covered closely the NFL's various successes, trials and tribulations, scandals. You got him, of course, to talk about the protests that Colin Kaepernick started. And there were a couple of really interesting moments. First of all, Goodell said, we listened to them too late. We didn't listen early enough. Now we're hearing them. He said, now I understand. So I guess I'd ask you, what's the onus now on the NFL moving forward? I mean, he acknowledged that. He put out a really significant video where he said the NFL believes Black Lives Matter. What happens next? And what do you think the responsibility is for the NFL to do more on social justice? Why does the NFL have more responsibility than other sports leagues?
Yeah, because to whom much is given, much is required. The NFL literally owns one day of the week. Every Sunday is owned by the NFL, right? And you could argue 3, right? At least, it owns one full day and it owns a couple nights.
Right.
It owns a couple nights. I think to whom much is given, much is required. I've been given a lot, so I do a lot. I try to, at least. The NFL, you are a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You have to do more. Dan, intention without direction is worthless. The NFL has great intention. Now it needs to figure out what is its direction, right? I didn't love the intention of the playing the Black national anthem. That's not going to do anything. Personally, as a Black man, in my opinion, it's not going to do anything. Sooner or later, we have to go from names on the back of helmets and names on the front of helmets of lost and murdered and people who suffered from police brutality to ensuring it doesn't happen again. Dan, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. The NFL, please start to pour more into prevention. What does that look like? It depends. Dallas is different from LA, which is different from Chicago, which is different from New York. The needs are different state to state, but everybody has to start to get their hands dirty.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You mentioned the names on the helmets. And actually, Malcolm Jenkins just last week was quoted saying the tokenism doesn't really mean much anymore, which, quite a quote, but really making the point that he wants the team owners to do more, to use their political clout more. I mean, do you see that happening? Do you feel confident that the NFL will do more if it's not forced?
No. If it is not forced, no. This is why things get uncomfortable. Change will not occur unless change is forced to occur. Women would not have been given the right to vote if not for protesting in some capacity. Black people would not have been given the right to vote, would not have been given the right to integrate, would not have been given the right to marry white people if not for protesting of some capacity. We have to remember, bro, change won't just change because I feel like changing. Even let's talk sports, even in the NFL. Back when I was playing 5 years ago, you would get fined like $557 for every pound you're overweight. So reporting to camp, for every pound you're overweight. So if you were 10 pounds overweight, it's about $5,000. And mind you, that's per day. So it's not like, we fined him on Monday, so he won't get fined on Tuesday. That's per day. Why am I giving you this example? Because change will not occur unless you are forced. If Emmanuel Acho showed up to camp overweight, I was forced because I was fined. And I submit the same thing in our society. The owners aren't just going to wake up one day and be like, nah, you know what? I feel bad for these black people finally. Let's do something about it. Not how it's going to work. In all honesty, they'll probably be oblivious to the fact that there is any injustice going on. And so, that's really my stance is change has to be forced. I don't think it has to be physically forced. Change can occur through dialogue, through educated, emotional dialogue, which will lead to empathy. That's what I'm doing. Other people have their approach. I have mine.
Specifically on the protests during the anthem, you mentioned in that interview, it's not about the flag. And you got Goodell to say the same. He said, it's not about the flag. And yet that misconception persists. We had Drew Brees on our own network back in June saying that he felt the protest is disrespectful to the military. He has since changed at least his public stance on that. You have loud corners of the internet where people insist it's disrespectful to the flag. And I guess I would just ask you, how do you go about changing those minds, or do you not try to? How do we convince people that it's about, peaceful protest and standing up for something? It has nothing to do with disrespecting a symbol of America.
No one who is oppressing someone will ever respect their protest, right? No one who is being protested will ever be like, okay, I like the way you protested that. Thank you for how you protested that. That's just not going to occur. Now, what we can say is this. As a truth teller, which I try to be specifically in this realm of conversation, two primary facets of truth. Number one, Colin Kaepernick was told to knee and asked to knee by a Green Beret, someone in the military, Nate Boyer, a former teammate of mine. He was a long snapper for the Seahawks. He told Colin Kaepernick to take a knee, as that is a greater sign of respect. Number two, in general, it is not about the flag. Many people point to Colin Kaepernick saying, I will not stand for a flag that oppresses people, etc., represents oppression. But it is a matter of raising awareness. So there are people, Dan, on far sides, extremes that I don't try to talk to. I'm trying to stand as a bridge and just say, hey, let's all for 1 second just have a conversation about what is and isn't right. I'm not negating Drew Brees' opinion, right? So many people are like, wait, Drew Brees is allowed to have an opinion. He is. Just make sure that your opinion is at least just in its stance. And that is, I think, where the misconception was with Drew Brees, is that his opinion implied that okay, if I stand because so many people fought in this war, and I stand kind of to pay homage for that, it implied ignorance of the black people who fought in the war and didn't get the same rights. And so that's really how I approach the totality of the flag and the national anthem.
We've been talking, Emmanuel, about the NFL specifically and about that protest. Let's zoom out a little bit, because obviously during this time, we've had the social justice movement really show up across the sports landscape. And I wanted to ask you, while we have you, one kind of interesting side effect, and everyone has their reasons. You know, there's also a pandemic going on. There's also the election. But interestingly, right now, live sports ratings are down compared to a year ago for all the major sports. The exception was the WNBA, interestingly. Ratings were up for them. But ratings down pretty significantly for baseball, for basketball. And it's interesting, you know, I wrote about it, and you get immediate comments from people screaming on the internet, and they say, LeBron, you know, social justice warriors. And it's always, they mention LeBron, and they always go right to the NBA. And in one of your recent interviews, you said something I thought was really interesting. It was not an episode from your show. You said, you know, social justice and life and death, that's not politics. That's not political. But you've got people right now screaming, you know, sports have gone political. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I fervently believe that life and death and justice and injustice isn't political. I personally believe that it is human and it is humane. I don't think that we make things political just for the sake of being divisive and arguing. But I think there's a difference between Black Lives Matter, the adjective, and Black Lives Matter, the noun. I think there's a difference between Black Lives Matter, the noun, being the group, Black Lives Matter. I have never once gone public and said, yes, support Black Lives Matter, the noun. I'm saying support Black Lives Matter, the adjective, being black. Those lives do, in fact, matter. We try to make things political unnecessarily. I don't get into political conversations. I'm strictly talking about justice versus injustice, oppression versus oppressed. That is where I like to stand with these conversations. There are bigger things going on than sports right now. Like, I'm glad sports are down. Like, and I'm a sports guy. You can tell, you can cut this for my bosses, for the world to see. Like, there's a presidential election going on. There's a pandemic going on. I would hope to God that a game, which all sports are, is a game, are lesser important than lives. So when people are like, oh, sports are down, I'm like, bravo. Because at least that shows me that we have our priorities right in this country. Sports will pick back up. They always do. So I don't even have an issue with sports being down. When you talk about things being political, life and death, it's not political. It's just not.
Manuel, I wish we had so much more time. I wish we had all the time in the world, but let's end on this. Where can you take your new influence and your new role as a speaker on these issues, not just the series, everything you're doing? Where can you go from here?
I would say this, again, to whom much is given, much is required. And now that my platform has been bigger, I got to do more with it. I went, Dan, from 40,000 followers to 700,000 followers in 2 weeks. And I didn't buy them either. And that's on Instagram. And I think so now it's a matter of, I don't want to be successful. I want to be significant. And there's a difference between significance and success. I wrote the book, Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man. You can pre-order it, uncomfortablecombos.com. Why did I write it? Because the spoken word, Dan, has sizzle. The written word has substance. And I can talk all day and you can have clips and they might go viral. But when I give you a book with just so much more detailed depth and knowledge, it can be passed down from generation. You're a sports guy, let's talk sports. In track and field, a 400-meter 4x1 race, a 4x4 race, you pass a baton. This book, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, I wanted to be a baton. So you can pass to your offspring, and they can pass to their offspring, and they can pass to their offspring. So to answer your question, thesis statement, where can I go next? Keep my foot on the gas. Like I told you, I have several more episodes. I'll just tell you, the one I'm super excited about, I'm sitting down with a police department. And just several officers, and just let's talk about it. Let's tackle it. So Look out for those on my social media channels. Follow my social media channels, as that's where I release all my episodes. And I'm going to keep going, dude, until I see the change. And even when I see the change, I got to see more of it.
Excellent. Well, we love what you're doing. Loved having you on, and we'll have to get you back on Yahoo Finance soon. Emmanuel Acho, thanks.
My brother. Thank you, dude.
And this concludes the Yahoo Finance 2020